You know, friends, so many people have wished me congratulations on a 67-year career in baseball, and they've wished me a wonderful retirement with my family. And now, all I can do is tell you what I wish for you. May God give you for every storm a rainbow, for every tear a smile, for every care a promise, and a blessing in each trial. For every problem life seems a faithful friend to share, for every sigh a sweet song, and an answer for each prayer. You and I have been friends for a long time, but I know in my heart that I've always needed you more than you've ever needed me. And I'll miss our time together more than I can say. But you know what? There will be a new day and eventually a new year. And when the upcoming winter gives way to spring, rest assured, once again, it will be time for Dodger baseball. So this is Vin Scully wishing you a very pleasant good afternoon wherever you may be.
Here we go, back again with another episode of the Around the Show Sports Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kyle Showalter, and I, along with so many others, am mourning the loss of Vin Scully, who passed away Monday evening at 94 years old. And I've been very emotional dealing with this passing. And I don't think I've been this emotional over somebody passing away that I don't know since Kobe Bryant back in 2020, or even before him, thinking back to Stuart Scott, who passed away from cancer, a legendary media personality in his own right. And I think the reason why is because Vin Scully allowed us a peek into his life and who he is as a man, as a father, as a husband, every single day for 66 years in that booth. And even with all of that insight into who Vin Scully was, it's still hard to summarize exactly the man that he was, because he lived such an incredible life in such an incredible way. And I think my favorite Vin Scully story, I'll start with this, is that he got his start in broadcasting because he called a Boston University football game on a frigid winter evening on the rooftop with no protection from the elements, with no coat and no gloves. And a 22-year-old Vin Scully fighting against the elements in the freezing cold called a perfect game. And he was so impressive during that game that he got the opportunity to join the Dodgers broadcast team for the following season. And 66 years after that, he finally retired. And in those 66 years, no man ever saw more baseball history, and in the next 1,000 years, no man ever will. He called 3 World Series, 4 National League Championship Series, 4 All-Star games. He called 18 no-hitters and 3 perfect games. And what makes baseball so special and so different from every other sport is that we talk about games in other sports, but in baseball, we remember the moments. And nobody painted the picture of the moment better than Vin Scully. And I go to 2 instances of this that stick out to me mostly. The first of which is Mookie Wilson's incredible at-bat in Game 6 of the 1986 World Series, the famous Bill Buckner error. As Vin Scully says, it gets through Buckner. And perhaps the most famous home run in Major League Baseball history, Kirk Gibson's Game 1 home run in the 1988 World Series, as he rounds second and he pumps his fist. Vin Scully utters potentially the most perfect sentence ever in a broadcast. In a year so improbable, the impossible has happened. Perfection. And I think the most important contribution Vin Scully ever gave to baseball is how he treated Jackie Robinson when he was breaking the color barrier, talking about him like he was just another player, just another great player in the long lines that he would have the privilege to call games for over his 66 years. Jackie Robinson was just another guy. And I have no doubt in my mind that that made the transition into Major League Baseball easier and helped usher in a new era for baseball. Another one of my favorite Vin Scully stories is how he became beholden to his childhood team, the Giants. He was walking by a window of a Chinese laundry and peered in to see the box score from the World Series game the night before. And he saw that the Yankees had thrashed the Giants 18-4 in that game. And Vin Scully says, "Oh, those poor Giants." And he was a fan from that point forward until he joined the Dodgers broadcast booth. And I think it's poetic that he would call his last game for his Dodgers against his Giants in San Francisco. And then on Monday night, the Dodgers were playing in San Francisco when the news was announced that he had passed away. And I want to leave you with one of my favorite and one of Vin Scully's favorite quotes as well. One that he used during his final broadcast, and I believe it perfectly summarizes the way that Vin Scully called games, lived his life, and who he was as a man. He said, "Don't be sad that it's over. Smile because it happened." Thank you for loving baseball, Vinny. We love you the same way. So for the rest of the show, I want to talk some NFL football. With the season fast approaching, I decided to take to Instagram and put a little feeler out for some questions for a mailbag pod. So that's what we're going to do for the rest of the show, and I picked the 3 best questions that I thought would be the most interesting. And the first of which comes from Wyatt, who asked, AFC West, whose division is it to lose? And I think this is a great question and a one that you could really say 4 different answers to of the 4 teams. It's certainly going to be an interesting year. And as we go around, we look at the Raiders, who added Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones to bolster both their offense and their defense. They signed Derek Carr to an extension, finally proving that he's their answer long-term at quarterback, at least for these next couple of years. They brought in Josh McDaniels, the longtime Patriots offensive coordinator. I think they're a very interesting team. I talked about them last week, why I think they're going to be really, really good this year. Look over in Denver. They brought in Russell Wilson, potentially the biggest offseason addition of any team in the entire NFL. They bring in their franchise quarterback. They did just lose Tim Patrick earlier this week, their wide receiver, who really came onto the scene last year strong. To an ACL injury, he'll miss the entire season, which is rough for them, but they have a very good defense. They still have good weapons, guys like Cortland Sutton, guys like Jerry Jeudy, guys like KJ Hamler, who can stretch the field really well. I think they're definitely a team to keep an eye on as well. Over in Los Angeles, we have the Chargers with Justin Herbert, boy wonder at quarterback, but they brought in a couple of big defensive pieces this offseason, bringing in Khalil Mack for a second-round pick and signing J.C. Jackson, the cornerback out of New England as well. They're going to help shore up that defense that really needed some patchwork last season. And then obviously they have weapons galore. They got Austin Eckler in the backfield. They have Mike Williams, who they just signed to an extension, Keenan Allen. That team is going to be very, very good this year. I would have them in a playoff spot. But I think if you're looking at the question the way it is asked, whose division is it to lose? How can you not say the Kansas City Chiefs? The Kansas City Chiefs have a Super Bowl MVP playing quarterback for them, potentially the most talented thrower of the football that we have ever seen in the history of the league, who is just now starting to really get the X's and O's, in his own words, in Patrick Mahomes. They have Andy Reid, a Super Bowl winning head coach, a guy who has done it in multiple spots. In Philly and in Kansas City, he's been successful. They have an incredible assortment of weapons, even without Tyreek Hill. It's not as good, but they still have Travis Kelce, and they brought in Juju Smith-Schuster. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is hopefully going to help stretch the field for them as well. I think they're definitely still a very interesting team on offense. And then defense, we kind of know what they are. They're going to bend but don't break. We'll see what happens with the loss of Tyrann Mathieu and see what that does to the defense. But I think in the context of the question, whose division is it to lose, it's hard not to answer the Kansas City Chiefs because they've been so dominant every single year since Patrick Mahomes took over as the starter. And last year, yeah, there was definitely some regression from Patrick Mahomes, and without Tyreek Hill, there is a little bit of cause for concern. You know, is he going to go back to having incredible interception luck like he did the previous couple of years, or is he going to go, like last year, have horrible interception luck and have balls bouncing off of his receivers' hands into defenders' arms? I think a lot of Mahomes' struggles last year were kind of over-exaggerated, and I think, you know, his successes where he was having incredible interception luck early in his career, I think those were a little bit under-talked about. I think we're going to find a middle ground between those two, and there's always going to be plays that Mahomes makes that makes you scratch your head, just like we have with all the gunslinger quarterbacks. Guys like Brett Favre is the most famous example. But I don't think that gives me personally any reason to doubt that the Kansas City Chiefs are the team to beat. Now, if you change the question, who do I think is going to win the division? That I might have a different answer for, because like I said, you can make a case for all 4 of these teams to be potentially a Super Bowl contender. If everything goes well for all of these teams, it's hard to imagine that their ceiling isn't a Super Bowl championship. The question is always going to be who stays healthy, who has the most things go their way, who has the ball drop out of the other guy's hands, things like that happen over the course of the season that kind of tell the story of the entire thing. But in terms of whose division is it to lose, I have to stick with the Kansas City Chiefs for now. And our second question comes from friend of the show, Weston, who asked, do the Denver Broncos have a legitimate shot to win a Super Bowl with Russell Wilson at quarterback? And as I hinted to in the answer to my last question of who in the AFC's division it is to lose, I did say that all 4 teams, I believe, have a Super Bowl ceiling. So, yeah, short answer, absolutely, the Broncos are good enough to hoist a Lombardi at the end of this season or in future seasons. But the question is, will they? And obviously, that's the question for every team. The Broncos have a very good football team. They have Russell Wilson, who, through his struggles late in the year, has been a Super Bowl winning quarterback in the past, has been a great quarterback in this league for a lot of years. And he joins a team with a lot of really great weapons. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and KJ Hamler are as good of a 1-2-3 as I can think of in the AFC off the top of my head. And they lost Tim Patrick before that. So that's obviously a big blow, and that kind of takes that down a peg. But that's still 3 guys who are certainly capable, if not good, at being an NFL wide receiver. And if you give Russell Wilson that many weapons, he's certainly going to be able to make something happen. If you look at the defense, it's not as good as it was in years past. Pat Surtain looked great last year as a rookie. They got Justin Simmons at safety still. Bradley Chubb is still rushing the passer. No, there's no more Von Miller. No, there's not some of these other guys who played great for them in the past, but we can certainly see this defense taking shape and still being good to great at the very least. Now, they are going to be stymied a little bit by the division that they play in. They're going to have to face Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, and Derek Carr 6 times a year. So at the end of the season, the defense might not look great statistically, but if you turn on the tape and watch these guys fly around, I'm sure you're going to be impressed when they play against some of these quarterbacks that aren't world eaters like some of the AFC West guys are for sure. Now, what is going to be the X factor if the Broncos do go and win a Super Bowl? I think personally it's going to be greatness throughout the season from Russell Wilson versus just the hot starts that he's been getting off to these last couple of seasons. And a lot has been made about the Seahawks going from this run-heavy offense to, as everyone says on Twitter, hashtag let Russ cook. They finally did, and for 6 to 8 weeks every season, it seems to work great, and the defenses adjust, and Wilson seems to have a really hard time finding holes once they do, and a lot has been said about he can't throw against too high safety looks. I don't think that's true. He's done it his entire career. It's harder to throw against too high safety looks because there's more guys in the secondary. So, of course, he's not going to look as good. And I don't know what it is, truly, in the X's and O's that makes him struggle going through the season. Does he lose a little bit of zip on the ball? Does he lose a little bit of juice in his legs? Does he just get a little bit careless with the football at times? He certainly holds on to the football too long, and that's going to be something that he needs to correct in Denver. I'm not buying that their offensive line is as good as it was last season, but I digress. It's all going to hinge on Russell Wilson's shoulders, and he's certainly capable of taking a team over that hump. He's shown us in the past, and this is a better set of weapons than he's arguably ever had. So just based on Russell Wilson at quarterback, I think absolutely they can. They have a great team around him. It's going to be how they fare in that division if they can make it into the playoffs, and then just playing well once you get there, just like every sport, man. If you get hot at the right time, who knows what can happen. And for the final question of the episode, we have a hot take from Andre, who says Kyler Murray isn't worth his contract and will be traded within the contract term. And I think this can be broken up into 2 separate pieces, and I think we can look at them individually and kind of dissect them for what they are. And I want to talk about the second part of that question. He'll be traded within the lifetime of his contract, and go with that first. So my first thought when I read this sentence is, if Kyler Murray gets traded, it's going to be Kyler Murray's decision to get traded. It's not going to be the Cardinals saying, this guy's no good, we got to get rid of him. It's going to be Kyler Murray saying, I want fresh surroundings around me. Just like we've seen these quarterbacks kind of take control of their careers and the narratives around them and do that, whether it's Matthew Stafford, whether it's Aaron Rodgers threatening to do it a couple off seasons in a row, Tom Brady, some of these other guys. You know, we've seen quarterbacks take the lead, franchise guys, in getting out of situations they no longer want to be in. Kyler Murray's a franchise quarterback, whether he's playing Call of Duty all day and not watching film or not. And he's given a lot of pushback, which I really respect, for, you know, the narrative surrounding that whole situation and that clause in his contract. And good for him. He should have been pissed. That should have never gotten leaked. It should have been never something that people talk about, but it did get out. And because of that, it had to be talked about, and I'm glad to see him fighting back. That's a little bit of a tangent otherwise, but back to the focus. If Kyler Murray gets traded, it's absolutely going to be under his own volition. The Cardinals aren't just going to up and decide that they don't want their 4-4 running quarterback who could throw the ball 60 yards in the air on a dime, falling over, tell him that they don't want him anymore. It's just not going to happen, especially after they agree to give him $230 million. Now, the first part of the question, Kyler Murray isn't worth this contract. I think you can see what I'm getting at here. I would have paid Kyler Murray that money in a heartbeat if I was a general manager in the NFL. If I wasn't the Cardinals general manager, I would be on the phone trying to get him in the building, trade for him so that I can offer him that. Kyler Murray is a special talent. I think the first time I realized that was when he was playing Alabama in the college football semifinal, and I saw him drop a ball in the bucket into a wide receiver's arms from 50 yards away from the end zone. They were getting the hell kicked out of him at that point in the game, but he stepped up in the pocket and delivered an absolute strike, and that's when I feel like I realized that arm is going to play in the NFL. Kyler Murray is a special thrower of the football before you factor in the way that he's able to run. And as he gets better with studying film and dissecting defenses, as all quarterbacks do, as they get to the end of their rookie deals, they get more in tune with what they need to look for on film, how to dissect defenses. It's not something that should be expected of Kyler this early in his career. All that other stuff caked on certainly doesn't help with the reputation, but I think a lot of his struggles just are dealing with the fact that, teams get film on him and he has to learn to adjust to that. And once he does, he's going to be one of these top 5 guys that we talk about in the NFL most likely. As the Aaron Rodgers of the world retire, the Tom Brady's of the world retire, those spots are going to open up. I could easily see Kyler Murray sliding into one of those spots, the 4th or 5th best quarterback in the league, because his physical tools are so special, and we're just scratching the surface of what he can be as he gets more film under his belt, as he gets more of an understanding of what the defense he's looking at is doing. As he gets more in tune with his receivers throughout the season, he has the potential to be a special, special, special guy. And unfortunately, for teams, not for the quarterbacks, this is just what quarterbacks cost now. You got guys like Jared Goff getting $30 million extensions. You best believe Kyler Murray is worth the 30-something that he's getting paid. I'm sorry, I'm just not buying that. That when a player is special, you don't let them go. And Kyler Murray's a special player. The Cardinals have to hold on to him, and I believe he's absolutely going to be worth the cost of that contract. Tenfold proven he continues to progress and is able to hold his early season hot streaks late into the season. Once we see him do that, he's going to be a perennial MVP candidate. You can book it. And as we round out the show today, I just want to say a loud thank you to everybody for listening and tuning in. Make sure we smash that like and subscribe button down below. Some personal news. I am going to be getting back surgery this following week, so there's going to be no Around the Show Sports Podcast episode next week as I'm going to be laying down and recovering. Just got to get a little bit of stuff cleaned up back there. But I appreciate everybody tuning in so much. I will catch you guys in 2 weeks when we are back. Thank you, Vin Scully, for all of the memories and all of the love over the years. We will miss you forever. Until next time, peace.